the ether.
Pat Smith joins us on 365 Sports, co-host of Three Man Front. Also, the big monster of WJOX in Birmingham joins us on 365 Sports. 9 teams, Pat, in the top 25. Is that what you, I mean, I see you wanted more or whatever? There could probably be one or two more, but is that sometimes hard to fathom? But I mean, they got a bunch of really good teams.
Well, I guess that's what happens when you add Oklahoma and Texas, right?
Yep.
Immediately in the coaches poll, it's paying dividends. And, based on the fact that we do our show in Birmingham, we're about an hour away from Tuscaloosa, about 2 hours away from Auburn. But we actually had Auburn fans calling in today because if you look through the rest of the voting, Auburn would come in at number 32. So, Auburn fans are like, you know what? We are very close to being a top 25 team. So, you know what? They were looking to try to get that 10th team in there. I'm sure before the season starts, another SEC team will try to vie for that 10th spot. But most folks in the SEC footprint pretty happy today to see 9 teams in the top 25.
Pat, when it comes to Auburn, I would have thought that of all the people in the world who would get aggressive in the quarterback transfer portal, it would have been Hugh Freeze. Mm-hmm. He did not do that. He is happy with Peyton Thorne. And I guess I have to trust him because he knows more than me, but I watched their offense last year, and it felt like quarterback was one of the weak spots. How's this going to go year 2 with that?
Well, here's the thing. So last year he entrusted Philip Montgomery as his offensive coordinator and play caller. And so about halfway through the season, you're watching this team week in and week out. This team was putrid. I mean, they barely could get to 300 yards a game in total offense. Very, very bad. They had the pieces, but for whatever reason, the wide receivers, they just weren't getting open. They weren't making catches. So it really wasn't all Peyton Thorne's fault, but just the offense looked like they were going through molasses. It was very disjointed. So towards the end of the season, Hugh Freeze, everyone knew he started calling the plays again. Montgomery was not fired during midseason, but he was definitely let go immediately once the season ended. So Hugh Freeze has basically got himself a new offensive coordinator, but he's admitted openly that he's going to be heavily more involved in what's going on the game plan and what's happening from an offensive standpoint during the actual game. They have a lot of confidence in Peyton Thorne. The other reason why they may not have kicked the tires, and again, this is just what we hear through the grapevine, that Auburn through Brian Harsin, those 2 failed years when he was at Auburn, never spent a dime really in NIL money. Like he wanted to go and do it a certain kind of way. And you guys know better than anybody that that's just not the way college football is run now. Well, Auburn had a nice little nest egg in the NIL once Hugh Freeze got there. So what did they do? They invested wisely. They go out in state. They get one of the top recruiting classes that Auburn has had in the last 15 years. They sign all these top-notch receivers. They've taken some 5 stars away from Alabama. So if you're looking from a budget standpoint, I think Auburn has spent their money wisely through the NIL, but they were not going to go out and spend $1 million, $2 million bucks on a quarterback. And Hugh Freeze basically openly said that if we see somebody we like, then obviously we're going to recruit them. But they just weren't willing to go there what the price was in this last class from the transfer portal in regards to the quarterbacks. They like who they got with the change in offensive play calling. Auburn thinks that they're going to be able to move the ball quite effectively this season. Is
that, in a way, a Dabo Swinney type philosophy, that at least what you're talking about?
Well, not necessarily. I think Dabo is so hardcore in regards to who he's going to look at in the portal, things of that nature. I honestly believe it became a budgetary situation, Smokey, in regards to what Auburn was willing to do. If you look at the current recruiting rankings, Auburn is currently 5th in America in recruiting. If you look at the top players in the state of Alabama, granted, Alabama's not like Texas because obviously we got 4 million residents as opposed to what you guys have in the state of Texas. But there's a lot of blue chip athletes, a lot of 4 or 5 stars in the state of Alabama. High school level is extremely high here. And he has been able, I'm talking about Hugh Freeze, he's been able to go out right now and as the top 16 players in the state of Alabama, about 10 of them have already committed to Auburn. That's huge, especially when you're going up against someone that's brand new in the state like Kalen DeBoer.
I did see the surge. They've had a 5-star and a couple of multi 4-star guys and seem to have pretty good momentum right now.
They have very good momentum, and that's the thing. And, of course, you talk to Alabama people, and the Alabama people, you know what they're going to tell you. Well, if you look at the recruiting rankings, we're still number 2 in America. Alabama is more a national brand where they're going out and signing and getting verbal commitments from kids from California and bringing kids from the West Coast that are 5 stars as opposed to grabbing kids in their own backyard. Now, not saying that that's not important, but as of right now, Auburn is doing extremely well within the state of Alabama and the Florida Panhandle.
Pat, when it comes to Alabama, they were ranked 5th today. I think they should be in the top 10. I think 5th is a little high based on the fact that they don't have the Saban level depth anymore. Not that their depth isn't good, but dropping them down a couple spots wasn't enough for me, just based on we don't really know what they have past a lot of their starters. And they lost some starters they would have normally lost in the portal because of Nick Saban retiring.
Well, no, you're right. That was the biggest fear, especially those first 30 days when it seemed like basically half the roster, 5-star recruits leaving left and right. Caleb Downs, the SEC Freshman of the Year, he goes off and joins Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss at Ohio State, and obviously the 5-core Jalen Sayin, who is the 5-star quarterback from California, who had committed to Saban, was on campus, practiced during the Rose Bowl against Michigan. He ends up at Ohio State. So there was a lot of hand-wringing going on. But I will say this, he righted the ship pretty quickly. He was able to get a 5-star transfer portal kid, Caden Proctor, who was Alabama's left tackle last year as a true freshman, who left when Saban left, went to Iowa, then came back to Alabama. So Alabama was able to right the ship a little bit. Now the depth is a question mark on certain defensive play, the defensive interior, the defensive secondary. They had so many guys go to the next level and play in the NFL or get drafted in the NFL. So that's the area that we're paying very close attention to, because we firmly believe having Jalen Milroe come back at quarterback, they have a very talented running back room. And what Kalen DeBoer and that staff was able to do with Michael Penix last year and get to the national championship game with Washington and a bunch of 3 and 4 stars, he's got some 4s and 5s on this roster offensively. And many people believe that this offense is not going to be the problem. It's about what they're going to be able to do on defense and be able to stop people.
If you take what DeBoer dealt with, the sudden retirement of Saban, him coming in, and the initial loss of talent, you mentioned Caleb Downs, but there were others, and where they are, I guess, before they started back for this summer or fall, how would you grade what they actually ended up accomplishing with the roster development in a short amount of time?
Well, it's going to be – jury is still out, Smokey, on that, and the reason why is because they went and got 3 pieces in the secondary. And all indications to the first week of fall camp, they're happy with their work ethic. They're happy with what athleticism they bring to the table. But you and I both know it looks a lot different when you're going up against air than when you get into the scrimmage. I got a scrimmage coming up Saturday, so a lot of that's going to kind of be played out over the next couple of weeks. But for the most part, I think they did a really nice job, even under Nick Saban. Nick was very selective about the portal. He wanted to do the portal. He was not like anti-portal like Dabo Swinney is, but he was extremely selective. Meanwhile, Kalen DeBoer and those guys, they were selective as well, but they were able to go out and get some top-notch guys that they firmly believe are going to be able to contribute and add that depth so needed because of the guys that left out of the transfer portal once Nick Saban retired.
Pat, who in the SEC is under the radar, in your opinion?
Well, here's the thing, and I've caught a lot of grief on my show. I'm big on Ole Miss this year. And, of course, everybody knows that Lane Kiffin likes to talk a big game, but if you look at the numbers, he just has not been able to do anything as of yet. I know the coaches poll, they had them at number 6. They didn't get a lot of love from the SEC media. They were behind Alabama in the SEC media poll. But if you look at Ole Miss's schedule, if they're ever going to do it, and based on who he got out of the transfer portal, the transfer portal king and Lane Kiffin, I think this Ole Miss team, with what they have on their schedule, they don't play Alabama, they don't play Auburn, they get Georgia at home, they got to go to LSU, that's big. But I think if this is the year for them, having a quarterback coming back in Jackson Dart, the defensive players that they've added with Pete Golding as defensive coordinator, I think Ole Miss is a team A lot of people are probably saying, until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. Well, this year, I'm pushing all my chips to the center of the table, and you guys might have me back on to December and laugh at me.
No.
But right now, I think it's the Ole Miss Rebels. I think the Rebels could be a surprise team.
If not now, when? I mean, given all the resources
exactly.
they've done it. Yeah, I agree with you, Pat. Do you expect all the teams in the SEC to utilize the 105 scholarships?
You better believe it. No, there's no question about it. I mean, we have talked to some guys off the record, and they are very upset. You know, they love the walk-ons because so many people, and it's just like in the state of Texas, you got guys that are legacies, guys that's grandfather played here, his great uncle played here, you know, his daddy played there, whatever the case may be. And this kid might not be a star at all in the recruiting services, but they love the university. They want to be a part of the university and the history. They'll go there and they will absolutely get beat to a pulp in practice just to be able to say that, you know what, I was able to play at the University of Alabama or Auburn University. So I think they really, really hate the fact that potentially could be absolutely outlawed. And if so, I think that's going to hurt some teams because from a practice standpoint, you guys know it better than anybody. You go out there and you beat all the ones and twos to death during the week. You got to have some guys to be able to practice, you know, that are third or fourth string or even walk-ons to be able to withstand the things that you have to do during a 12, 14, 15 game schedule now.
Pat, what is Arkansas thinking? Sam Pittman obviously was on the hot seat, probably still is. We just had Adam Rittenberg on from ESPN. He and Bill Connelly did a tandem article about the underachieving, and there are some blue blood names in that list. Arkansas has a proud football history, but they're kind of stuck now. And with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, that kind of just knocks them down another couple of notches. Can they ever get their swagger back?
I don't think so. And the reason why is because of this. It's what you just said. First off, we all know that Arkansas had to – I'm really good friends, and Smokey, this is going to take you back. I'm really good friends with Coach Jack Crow.
Yep.
And maybe those in your audience don't know Jack Crow. Jack Crow was the head coach at the University of Arkansas in the late 80s, early 90s. He had that infamous game when the Citadel came to Fayetteville and knocked off Arkansas. And then a few weeks later, he lost his job. But I'm very good friends with him, and we still talk about Arkansas. He goes back and he speaks there a good bit in regards to the quarterback club. And he says the same things that you just said, Smokey, in regards to the problems that Arkansas is going to have coming back. He used to always go to recruit in Texas, whether it was the Metroplex in Dallas or anywhere else in the state of Texas, because there's not enough athletes in the state of Arkansas. But now all of a sudden you added Missouri to the conference. That's a big rivalry. Now in your own backyard, you got Oklahoma and Texas joining in, and you already had Texas A&M. That is extremely problematic for them from a recruiting standpoint. I love Sam Pittman. Followed him a long time and obviously covered him when he was at Georgia as the O-line coach. Everyone loved him. But unfortunately for him, the embrace the hog mantra that they have this year, it's just not going to work. Their schedule's brutal. They just don't have the Jimmies and the Joes to be able to pull this thing off. And I think at the end of the year, guys, I think you will see Sam Pittman take it to the lake. I think he'll retire and he will walk away. And then once again, Hunter Yurachek is going to have to figure out a way to bring somebody there to Fayetteville and try to get this thing going in the right direction.
Pat, outside of Texas A&M, who we know how they feel about Texas, what SEC team will be annoyed by the Longhorns with fan base, not team? Fan base will be annoyed by the Longhorns first.
Probably Georgia, just because Georgia will have to make the trip to Austin. Mm-hmm. And just like Alabama fans had to a couple of years ago when they went to Austin and pulled out that last-second win when Bryce Young was the quarterback. And listen, Alabama fans got their fill of them last year in Tuscaloosa at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So, yeah, I think it will be Georgia, no doubt about it. Because Georgia, although some people question whether Georgia is a blue blood, well, Georgia is one of the founding members of the Southeastern Conference. They're one of those old South antebellum schools. And for them to go to Austin and perhaps Sarkisian takes them to the woodshed or gets a victory off them, it won't take Georgia people very long whatsoever to get annoyed by Texas. I promise you that.
So ahead of Florida. No, well, Georgia's a part of it. I mean, that means that Texas is coming after their turf. because Georgia has right now those titles, those trophies on their mantle. It's recent, right?
Yes. And here's the thing. Because the fact that the king is now dead, so to speak, and Nick Saban is no longer in Tuscaloosa, because Kirby Smart only beat Nick Saban one time. I mean, all those times they played in Atlanta in Georgia's backyard, Bama beat them. I mean, the only time they beat them was in Indianapolis in the national championship game. But no, this is a newfound success. Georgia's always been an extremely solid program, never could get over the hump with Mark Richt. But Georgia is one of those programs the last 10 years, goes without saying, if not the best in college football right now, and be able to see a new kid on the block like Texas come in with Steve Sarkisian and knock them off and potentially get to Atlanta and win the SEC championship game. That's got a lot of Georgia people extremely nervous, especially now thinking that Alabama was going to be well in the rearview mirror. Now they got to worry about Texas.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Did the Baylor, I know this came out maybe late Friday, and you might have been done for the day. Did the Baylor coaches T-shirt, "We Pay Players," hit the radar in Birmingham?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. No, we loved it because immediately we started talking about, do you remember the old T-shirt guys that Brian Bosworth wore during the Orange Bowl? Remember the NCAA wouldn't allow him to play in the Orange Bowl, so he had a T-shirt, and I think what did it say, Smokey? It was the National Communist Athletics Association or something like that, taking a shot at the NCAA. That's what it reminded me of. I love it. I love the fact that, what did they say that wasn't true? And you know what? If you're a potential recruit or you're somebody out there, I mean, they're just speaking the truth about what the world of college athletics is now. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, some people clutched their pearls, and a lot of people went, "That's pretty damn bad." Yeah, I mean, like bad and as in a good bad.
Pat, he said it on our show when we had him at Big 12 Media Days, and it was the quickest response to a question he's ever had in his life, at least since we've known him, but I would venture in his life. Because Craig asked him, he said, "What do you attribute this recruiting surge to?" And he said, "Oh, we pay players." And, it was funny and hilarious. I ran into a friend of mine who works in the compliance department a few days later, and she said, oh my gosh, like it just kind of hit us so fast. And we're like, it's true, but put a little curtains on the window. Like that's how they would prefer to hear it. But yeah, I mean, it's just how it is, because compliance, you think in a certain way, right? Like, oh my gosh, like,
oh, they probably, Can you imagine?
Your instinct is to be like, oh, let's hide. And then you're like, well, wait, we don't have to worry about it. It's fine.
And one thing, Pat, Baylor has had his history. And some of of course, what happened a few years back is that they have at times been afraid of their own shadow, and like don't like create any kind of tremor. It kind of shows that, okay, this is who we are. They waited late on the NIL. Sometimes they say they didn't, but they did. Now they have GXG helping them out, and it's helped them. They've had some recruits, and they got to keep them. They got to win this year. Well, a lot of that staff won't be back, but I thought it was kind of a little bit like. You know what? A little swagger that they've missed now for about a decade.
Hey, you know what? And guys, based on the way things are done in the NCAA, when it takes 6 years for Bill Self to get hammered, now you've got Jim Harbaugh this afternoon coming out saying he never lied, never cheated, and now you got a potential notice of allegations at Michigan and a head coach that deletes 52 text messages off his phone for a guy that's on the sidelines cheating. So you know what? If a guy wants to have a T-shirt that says "We Pay Players," I just don't think the NCAA or anybody else is in a position right now to kind of, look down on somebody and to try to penalize someone. So I applaud Baylor for doing that. I think it's awesome.
Thanks for your time. Hey, by the way, Steve Cragthorpe passed away, Parkinson's disease, with Texas A&M for a pretty good time. Louisville
head coach,
Tulsa at LSU, quarterbacks coach a while back. Hate to see that our good friend Alexis Cuban, who covers Louisville, where he was the head coach for 3 years, just had that note. Just wanted you to know. Steve Cragthorpe.
Well, no, I do appreciate you letting me know. I really do hate to hear that. And guys, always enjoy speaking about college football with you guys.
You
Y'all
too.
Take care.
Pat Smith, he's the best, man. WJOX in Birmingham's a monster, and also 3-Man Front, where he is a co-host of that show, too.